Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Barber, Channel Marketing Manager here at Cisco Umbrella. We have a presentation by Dominic, who is our cybersecurity specialist. We want to make sure we have everything in front of you guys that you can make you the most um, effective for selling Cisco security and leading with Umbrella. Obviously, with us, it's going to be very highly needed to be for the SASE lead, which is talking about the overall architecture, which I'm going to have Dominic speak to. But how that's going to fit in our overall Cisco security portfolio is going to be very important. So I'd like to kick this off. I'd like to introduce everybody to Dominic Middleton. Dominic, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Hey, everybody. So first of all, appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to go through this training and overview with us. We have quite a bit to cover, actually. Like Jason said, we want to talk a little bit about SASE because there's kind of a lot going on right around that right now in the market. Do some kind of definitions there, lay the foundation with what exactly SASE is, what that means to Cisco. We want to talk about Umbrella because Umbrella is going to be kind of the core to everything for this presentation. And then at the end, we're actually going to talk about, let's say you have an Umbrella trial in flight. Let's say you have an opportunity in place. How do we work towards closing that? So it's going to be kind of start to finish. We're going to start with Umbrella, start with SASE. Like I said, lay the foundation, take you all the way through how to sell it, and then how to close the deal or the opportunity at the very end of that through an Umbrella demo. So without further ado, let me go ahead and jump into this one. Starting out, like I said, SIG SASE. Let me move this out of the way really quick. So let's talk about some of the challenges first. Like I mentioned, product overview, we're going to walk through the solution in detail and kind of talk about what SASE is as a framework. And talk about how you don't just buy SASE. SASE itself is not a solution. SASE is a compilation of many different solutions that customers definitely need today in this kind of crazy environment. So first of all, jumping into some of the challenges, why SASE in the first place? Why are we even having this conversation with a lot of our customers? So going back in time just a little bit, what this looks like for business operations, business continuity, mostly pre-COVID. This is kind of like, 5 years ago and beyond. This is what it looks like for business operations. So I'm working at our Cisco HQ. If I were to go roaming, if I were to work from my home office, or if I were to work from our branch office here in the Denver, Colorado area, what I would do is I would have traffic going back and forth, my internal traffic, my business traffic. That will be going back and forth over MPLS or site-to-site VPN. And that's like 80% of the traffic is going through those tunnels. There's a little bit of internet in there, but keep in mind, the internet is not what it was for business, 5+ years ago. If you think of all the business applications that we're using today, just as part of our daily life, I'm on 2 applications right now, I think, just, doing this PowerPoint. So think about that. That's what things used to look like. Lots of internal traffic, not a lot of internet traffic, and that has totally flipped today. Today, that internal traffic is the 20%. Now we're sending a ton of stuff back and forth over the internet, like I said, through those business applications, through different web portals, you name it, going across the internet there. And that lends or leads to a lot of problems that customers are facing now. And we're still not talking COVID yet. Keep that in mind. This is just business operations, business continuity. But what that means is as more traffic moves to the internet and going back and forth between there, what you have to do if you don't change the foundation of your operations is you have to add in a lot more MPLS tunnels. You have to add in a lot more site-to-site VPN tunnels. You have to keep building out your aging infrastructure that way, and that costs a lot of money to do that. If you've had a customer conversation and they're talking about adding MPLS tunnels to their current infrastructure, I'm sure you're aware of how costly things get to be pretty quick. We also run into performance issues. The number of tools and vendors, the integrations, trying to get things to work together is always a pain in the neck. Maintenance, making sure those tunnels are staying open, it just increases the cost. Performance, if you have too many people jamming up the tunnels, now we have things slowing down. So it makes for a huge headache, and that's kind of where things are at today, and why, again, we're kind of having this conversation. So what things look like today is instead of passing traffic internally or passing traffic back and forth between the MPLS or the site-to-site VPN, is the network is now a lot more decentralized. And again, keep in mind, this is still before COVID that we're having this conversation. Before COVID happened, we were looking at moving a lot of people, not just to their roaming offices, to their home offices, et cetera. we're having a lot of people who are now going through the branch office, going through their SD-WAN setup, going through their direct-to-internet access setup, instead of routing their traffic back to the main HQ behind the corporate firewall to then go out to the internet. We just want to go straight to the internet from wherever we're at. It saves a lot of time, takes away a lot of those costs, those performance issues. If I can just jump on my Wi-Fi here on my laptop, go straight to the internet without having to backhaul traffic through my VPN, that's going to save me a lot of time and money. So that leads to a lot more decentralized model, which is kind of what we're looking at here. And the new mindset for security now is to move to protect the data center, the cloud, the edge, the branch edge, protect the data wherever it's at, not just routing traffic back in through an old school model and then back out to the internet. So what does the market look like for SIG and SASE? Now, I know that's a lot of acronyms. I'll define some of that here in a second. But what the market looks like currently is 4 out of 5 organizations, our customers, are shifting to a direct-to-internet access setup. They don't want to go back through the MPLS. They don't want to go back through site-to-site VPN. They want to be able to just access their business applications and not be slowed down. And again, going back in time a few years, security and the security conversation typically looks kind of like we'll set up all of our tunnels, all of our traffic, all of our business continuity. If there's any budget left over, we'll kind of find a way to bolt security onto that conversation too. And that has to change as well. With everything happening the way it is today, the different threats that are out there, which we're going to talk about, the different mindsets, this has to change too. So as customers move to that direct internet access setup, security has to shift alongside that. Security has to be part of the initial conversation and has to be built in there into the budget and into the infrastructure from the very beginning. In fact, about 76% of customers prefer a multi-function security platform that's going to help them solve their work from home challenges, the remote security challenges. And there's good reason for that too. Before I jump into this, the reason for that and where this comes from, this is not Cisco saying this, by the way, this is Gartner, some of those other third parties that are saying you should have a single platform that has many different functions on it. Going back to the costs and the bogging down performance slide we talked about, if you have a lot of different groups that are setting up your SD-WAN, and you have another vendor for security, and you have another vendor for this, and another one for that, we're starting to run into a lot of things where we're lacking integrations. We're increasing the headache to set up this direct-to-internet access setup or this SD-WAN setup. So it makes a lot more sense if your customer's moving to a direct-to-internet access setup or moving to set up an SD-WAN, they should try and have as few vendors in place as possible, because that's going to help it's going to help them succeed, because it's going to be less of a headache, less integrations, less this and that. That's going to basically slow down their operations and lead to a lower ROI on their expenditures here with this new platform. So that's kind of what Gartner's saying. That's what those third-party think tanks are saying. You should look to have as many functionalities as possible from a single vendor. And what we're here to talk about is Cisco being that vendor. So breaking down SASE in a nutshell, what is SASE? Well, first of all, it stands for Secure Access Service Edge. And SASE, in a nutshell, is the joining together of network as a service, typically SD-WAN, but network as a service on one side, and your NetSec or your security as a service on the other side. They come together and they converge in the middle, and that's what SASE is by definition. So you'll see here on this slide, network as a service, like I mentioned, SD-WAN, but carrier setup, WAN optimization, network as a service, et cetera, et cetera. On the right side is what we're going to be focusing more on today, and that's going to have network security functionality, CASB or Cloud Access Security Broker, Cloud Secure Web Gateway, Zero Trust, Firewall as a Service, DNS, et cetera. So lots of different tools kind of in place, coming together with the network as a service, giving you a single solution that you can use to set up your SD-WAN, your direct internet access, your remote access, whatever you need to do there, and have it done from have it done on a secure model from the get-go. So why Cisco? Well, we're actually poised, and we've been poised really well to have this conversation since before SASE was even, a thought in people's heads. We've been around for quite some time. Coming out of the Open DNS acquisition back in the 2015 timeframe, we've been adding and increasing the capabilities of Umbrella all along the way. So we added our security functionality back in 2017. That's where we started throwing around terms like SIG. SIG, by the way, stands for Secure Internet Gateway. And as it says here, that's a set of security services that have been integrated and working together in the cloud. That moved on a couple of years and into 2019, 2020, when SASE really started to kind of come to fruition. We were kind of already there. And we said, hey, you know, Cisco as, you know, being the leader in the routing and switching market. Well, hey, look at all this other stuff we already have in place in our cloud security portfolio. They kind of just were already there working together hand in hand as an integrated model. And that is kind of where, you know, SASE just rolled out, and we were pretty much already there in the marketplace for it. So we bring that knowledge and that expertise that Cisco has on the routing side of the house, combined with all the great stuff we've been doing in the last 10 or 15 years around security. And that is where our SIG solution comes in to fit that SASE kind of framework. So again, you don't buy SASE. SASE is the framework that you want to set up. You buy the components of SASE, and that's where SIG comes in. SIG has those components that you buy to get to your SASE framework. More on that in just a second. So our strategic vision for SASE, what does this look like? Starting at the bottom here, again, like I mentioned, SASE, security as a service, combined with networking as a service. Your traffic is going to come from any user, no matter where they're at, no matter what device or network, if it's their home office, if it's the branch, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to come up here, and it's going to hit all these different security features before it goes out to wherever it's headed to, the internet, our private applications, public SaaS applications, business applications. That's kind of the flow of traffic here. So that is our strategic vision in a nutshell, and we're going to start breaking this down piece by piece for you to help you kind of have a better understanding of what you're actually, you know, positioning with customers here. So again, why Umbrella? Umbrella is the foundation of our cloud security solutions as it pertains to the SASE framework. So we have DNS layer security. If you've been around for any time or any amount of time at all, you're probably aware of our DNS solution. That was kind of the foundation of Umbrella. That has since morphed and turned into Secure Web Gateway. We have a cloud delivered firewall. We have CASB through our CloudLock acquisition a few years ago. We have, for our interactive threat intelligence, the largest commercial threat intelligence group in the world. Again, if you've been around for any amount of time, you're probably aware of Cisco Talos. They are our threat intelligence group. They're made up of about 350 plus threat hunters, researchers, hackers, analysts, et cetera, you name it. Not something that you pay for, not a license that you pay for, just the brains behind the operation that powers this awesome security model. And lately, we also started integrating our SecureX solution. And again, we'll talk about that at the end, but that is going to be what ties all of our security solutions together in a single interface. So if you haven't had a chance to check out SecureX, highly recommend you do that. But that is kind of the rundown of our security solutions through Umbrella. So from a licensing standpoint, how do I actually buy this? How do I buy SIG? How do I buy SASE? Well, for Umbrella, there's 3 flavors of Umbrella that you can purchase, or that your customer can purchase, I should say. We have DNS Security Essentials, and that is kind of, again, if you're aware of Umbrella and our DNS solution, that's kind of all that good DNS security that you're probably familiar with. It has all of our different policy reporting, enforcement APIs, threat responses built into that. That DNS security giving you protection for domains, security blocking, app discovery and blocking. I'm going to show you that in the demo and kind of break that down a little bit. But that's the starting point. Moving up to Advantage, you get everything below Essentials, plus you get the selective web proxy. You get the Investigate console, which is like Google for threats. You can throw a website, an IP address, email address, you name it, into Investigate. Get the full rundown of everything that we know from a threat standpoint about that particular individual or where it's coming from. So a great way to get a little bit deeper dive into the visibility of your network there. And then finally, talking about SASE, we have our SIG Essentials package. And SIG Essentials includes that Secure Web Gateway. It includes the Layer 3, Layer 4 cloud-delivered firewall. It's got Threat Grid for file analysis, everything below that you see there for DNS Security Essentials and Advantage. So that's going to be the most, I guess, the premier package, if you can call it that, for SASE. That's going to be your foundation for getting into a SASE kind of infrastructure. And you'll see a little bit of some wording there around SD-WAN, DNA Premier. There's already in place licenses that you can buy. If you're looking at doing an SD-WAN setup, you can go through Meraki, MX, you can go through Viptela. we have integrations out of the box. So we have you covered on the network as a service side of the house. And now here, what we're talking about, the Cisco security side of the house as well. So lots of good stuff right out of the box for you in moving to a SD-WAN or direct internet access setup. So let's go over these piece by piece just for a couple minutes. Let's talk about DNS security. DNS, so this is great security for the worker, doesn't matter where they're at, working out of their home office, working off of an airplane, working in a hotel, you know, if things open back up here, hopefully in a few months. But all office locations, any device in the network, roaming laptops, you name it. And this is every port and protocol. This is not just, you know, your HTTP, HTTPS web traffic. This is everything coming in. And we're going to talk about why that's important later on. But threats that might be coming across IoT devices in my home network, we're going to catch that. Threats that are coming across, you know, our network traffic at the branch office or HQ, we're going to catch that as well. So this is kind of the foundation for any traffic going back and forth north-south between myself and my business applications or the internet. We're going to be right there looking for threats that might be trying to make their way in. So super important as a foundational security piece for the SASE conversation. Again, hitting on some of the intelligence here, tons of visibility into the overall network, or the overall internet, I should say. We see about 4 to 5% of the actual internet. And we see just a ton of, you know, traffic coming and going, tons of different emails, tons of different threats that are bouncing back and forth across the globe. Like I mentioned, Talos, our threat intelligence group, we have security researchers sitting all around the world 24/7, 365. They're currently on top of chasing down threats. They're building different models that they can use to kind of determine what the bad guys are up to, where are the bad neighborhoods of the internet, what should we be looking out for next, and how do we keep our customers safe before the next attack comes out. So lots of cool stuff happening on both the catching and stopping threats, but also the preventing threats before they have a chance to even get out there. So really interesting way to do security. And let me talk about just some of the integrations really quick. Like I mentioned, Viptela, Meraki, MX, if you're looking to set up your SD-WAN solution. But we can do auto provisioning, we can do auto tunneling. So you purchase SD-WAN from us, again, through Viptela, Meraki, MX. You purchase Umbrella out of the box, you set up those auto provisioning, those auto tunnels, and you are out the gates and on your way. Redundancy is built in by design. You get tunnels in multiple different Umbrella data centers here. And then again, you already have your cloud delivered firewall and secure web gateway capabilities kind of right there already working for you. So you can see it doesn't matter where you're working, doesn't matter how you're sending traffic back and forth. Umbrella is there with these SD-WAN integrations to see any malicious traffic that might be heading north, south, east, west, and we can stop a lot of that before it has a chance to even make it in. Lots of different flexible connection methods depending on what your customer is looking for. For cloud delivered firewall web traffic, we have our secure IPsec tunnels. And again, you can get multiple tunnels set up and going at once to help kind of boost your performance capabilities there. For web traffic, we can set up proxy chaining and pack files. If you're looking to just do roaming, you just have those individuals working out of their home office, not a problem. We can put the Umbrella roaming client, or we can integrate with any Connect VPN on those roaming laptops to give you safe and secure web traffic and DNS traffic. So lots of different ways to set it up depending on what your needs are, what your customers' needs are. So from a kind of flow of information or flow of traffic here, typically what happens first is traffic coming into my network, coming to my, my laptop here from the internet. It's going to hit my DNS policies first. We're going to see if there's any threats there. We're going to see if there's anything we didn't know about. Talos is going to let us know, hey, this is a bad guy, don't let him in. If it passes all the DNS checks, one more note on that one, DNS first, because that gives us a chance to weed out a ton of bad traffic, so that doesn't bog down our firewall. So that makes the firewall that much more performance oriented. So traffic, if it makes it past the DNS, it's that cloud delivered firewall. That evaluates anything that's, again, not blocked by the DNS. It also, if it sees that it's port 80 or 443, aka HTTP, HTTPS, or web traffic, we're going to send that to the web gateway. The web gateway is going to check that out. If it's not web traffic, the firewall is going to direct it to whatever business application or wherever it needs to go. It has its own security checks in there as well. But you can see there's lots of different gates kind of in place here and lots of different security in layers that we already put in place to protect your customers against threats that are trying to make it into the network. So talking about the Secure Web Gateway really quick, lots of different features, lots of different engines built into the SWG. First of all, antivirus and AMP malware scanning. If you're familiar with AMP, also or now known as Secure Endpoint, you'll know that that's our Secure Endpoint solution. So if we see threats coming in that are trying to get into our endpoint, or if our endpoints are running AMP and they see a threat on that one, we have an integration there. And we can use files coming in that are directed at our endpoints to determine if a website is a bad guy and then block that website through Umbrella. So kind of some good integration and intelligence gathering happening there. Threat Grid for file sandboxing. If a file's coming in we've never seen before, we can send that to Threat Grid, explode it in a controlled environment, see what it is and what it's about, make the determination to block it or let it in. App visibility, granular controls, URL level reporting, selective or full SSL decryption, lots of kind of different cool engines and features in here, making sure that traffic coming in is not malicious, and we can, make sure we have some good blocks on that for that web traffic. The cloud delivered firewall, a few things to talk about here, but first of all, like I mentioned, auto tunneling, auto provisioning already in place right there, so we get that set up. Make sure your traffic leaving the environment is going to the right places and doing so securely. We have identity solutions in place to make sure the right people are who they say they are and sending the right traffic to the place it needs to be. Policies around the firewall, logging, reporting, global coverage, again, through Talos. So some different features here. Layer 3, Layer 4 firewall is currently out. Layer 7, there are some capabilities and limited availability. If you have a customer that wants to jump on that bandwagon and try and get in that way. We also just came out with the Layer 7 application visibility and control, which is a great way to do security from an app standpoint. So if you're familiar with ABC or you're familiar with our other firewalls, what that basically means is I don't just want to block or allow a single app. I want to maybe allow an app but block functionality within it. So Facebook, for example, what Layer 7 ABC allows me to do is I can allow my users to go to Facebook, but I don't want to let them message each other, or I don't want to let them post things or send things back and forth. So you have a lot more kind of granular control within those applications, which makes for a lot better visibility and control for those users. Identities, network tunneling, that's the primary identity. We can set up secondary identities. We can set up, secondary locations, so we have some redundancy in place there, which leads to that multi-geo data center support. Logging and reporting becomes standard as well. So lots of kind of cool features for that cloud-delivered firewall, and a lot more that we can dive into around that one. For the sake of time, though, we'll keep moving along. But CASB functionality, a few things to know about here. So first of all, visibility. One of the biggest mindsets we have here for the Cisco security teams are around visibility. If I can't see it, then how do I stop it, or how do I defend against it, right? So we want to give you as much visibility as possible into what's happening in my network, especially around shadow IT. That's one of the biggest issues that customers face is you ask them, what kind of threats are you blocking? What do you know about what's happening in your environment? What kind of investigations are you currently kind of running, or what are some of those main kind of threats that keep coming up? And it's not uncommon for the customer to come back and say, hey, we have visibility at that one location. If it's coming into our firewall, the firewall may see it, maybe it won't, but then we lose it. We have no idea what's happening in the actual network, what's happening east, west, what are people talking about, what threats are bouncing around in there. So we want to give you a lot more visibility around that, especially as it pertains to business applications. So we'll give you insight into the applications and the risk associated with those applications. We can give you policies to block different applications and kind of help clean up some of the shadow IT that's happening down there through blocking, through optimization of your applications and resources. More on that in the demo. So that, in a nutshell, is what SASE is about for Cisco, and that's where it stands today. We're approaching, from a roadmap standpoint, a lot of cool features that are coming along, like those full Layer 7 capabilities with the cloud-delivered firewall. But lots of cool features that are coming out, so make sure you take a look at that if you have a customer moving to an SD-WAN setup. And that is a great time to introduce this conversation. When do I talk about Umbrella? When do I talk about SIG? When do I bring some of this up? Well, you can talk about Umbrella really about any time. Umbrella DNS is good for 99.9% of the customers out there. So if you're having a security conversation, don't ever be nervous about bringing up Umbrella for DNS security. If you want to talk about Umbrella SIG, Umbrella Secure Internet Gateway, as it pertains to a SASE conversation, keep an open ear for terms like, yeah, we have an SD-WAN project coming up. Yeah, we're looking for a way to optimize performance for our users that are working out of their different offices. Yeah, we're kind of moving away from the headquarter office and the branch office and looking to move to a more work from home, more diffused kind of setup. What do you have for us there? That's a great time to start talking about security for those types of projects. So moving from that one, let's say we've already had that conversation. The customer is definitely interested in Umbrella. We're just trying to figure out, okay, how do I close this deal, right? How do I get this to the finish line and past and close this one down and make sure this customer is secured? That's what we're going to start talking about here with crossing the finish line. So a few things to be aware of when you're having those security conversations. I'm going to kind of go through this. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but just keep an open ear, I guess I could say, for some things to think about when you're talking to customers about their security needs. The first one is unlimited devices. So we're kind of moving from pre-COVID into the COVID environment and beyond now, okay? So think about unlimited devices before COVID. When we were all still going to the office and still working from there, what this typically looked like is, you know, I go into my Cisco office, I fire up my laptop, I'm sitting on our corporate Wi-Fi, I'm behind the corporate firewall, I'm good to go. That gives me a lot of protection. It puts a lot of blocks on what I can and can't do. And yeah, some of us are starting to move to a work from home environment, but I'm still kind of protected at that point just because of the firewall. More thoughts on that as we kind of go along, but think about it now in a post-COVID world, right? So everybody's working from home, or if they're working from home, they don't, or working from the office, there's probably not a lot of support going on there because the support people are probably at home. So either way though, working from home, unlimited devices is kind of the name of the game. And as we go through here, what we're looking to do from a security standpoint is not block 100% of the threats 100% of the time, because that can't be done. If someone's telling you my security solution blocks 100% of the threats 100% of the time, hang up on them, because that does not exist. So we're not trying to block everything. We're trying to block as much as we humanly and, you know, technologically can. But what we're really trying to do with all this is mitigate as many risks as possible and reduce as many variables as possible. So in limited devices, I am now in a post-COVID world. I'm sitting here in my kitchen at my table. I am not behind the corporate firewall. And there's a ton of devices in my house here, okay? So on top of my work laptop, I have my iPhone, which I do a lot of work off of. My fiance is in here with her laptop, her work phone. We have a smart TV. There's a Nest thermometer, some Wi-Fi enabled gadgets, Wi-Fi enabled, light bulbs, Alexa devices. That's all on the same network as my work laptop, okay? And those devices are typically not super secure. They're made by companies that want to give you a better quality of life, not make you more secure in your day-to-day thing. So they don't think about security first, okay? So typically the way that threats get into a network or get onto somebody's endpoint is they come in through backdoors like that. It's entirely possible to hack somebody through their Wi-Fi enabled light bulb, through their Wi-Fi enabled refrigerator. There's a huge case that happened a few years ago in Vegas. A major casino got hacked because the bad guys broke in through the Wi-Fi enabled thermometer in the fish tank in the lobby of the hotel or lobby of the casino. They got in through that fish tank thermometer. They stole all the personal information of the high rollers that frequented that casino. So it's not uncommon. Target was hacked through their HVAC system. I'm sure we could go on and on, but think about that. We don't know where people are working out of today. We don't know what devices they have in their house. We don't know what's connected to the same Wi-Fi that their work devices are connected to, and those are all ways for the bad guys to get in. Okay, so think about some of those things. What are we doing to mitigate some of those? What are we doing to protect those work devices and keep them from getting targeted by malicious actors and then getting the rest of the company targeted because the bad guys broke in, got into a work laptop, and then got into the main database through that way. So unlimited devices, umbrella controls for that. Like I said, any port and protocol, doesn't matter what you're connecting to the Wi-Fi from. If you have umbrella running on your work laptop like I do here, if somebody hacks into my house here through my Nest thermometer, they won't be able to get into my umbrella or to my laptop because umbrella is protecting me there at the DNS layer, okay? So unlimited devices is a huge topic of conversation. What are you doing to, mitigate some of those risks and variables? Transition to the cloud kind of, goes without saying. That's been happening for several years now. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one. That or digital transformation, except to keep in mind when we're talking about transforming and moving to a cloud environment, make sure security is part of that conversation as well, because we don't want to get everything set up and then go back in and go, oh, well, how do we bolt on security and try and, ram it in there and make it fit? Because that's a lot harder to do after the conversation versus at the beginning of the conversation. Distributed workforces, that was happening before COVID, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. That's just the way things are now. Everybody's distributed. Lots of people working from their home office today. So not really news to anybody as well, but again, just creates more variables, more risk. So how do we kind of combat a lot of this stuff? Well, we need to have better visibility. We need to know what people are connecting into. We need to know where they're going on their work laptops. We need to know what kind of traffic they're bringing in. Umbrella is going to help you get that visibility. I'll show you that in the demo. But too few experts, too much exposure, too little integration. Those are always big challenges faced by our customers. And the reason we're talking about Cisco today, the reason you want to go with Cisco as a vendor for security is because we have so much good integration in place out of the box. And not just between security solutions, but cross architecture as well. Like we talked about, picking out an SD-WAN solution for your SASE, for your network as a service side of the house, you want to have integrated security already in place there, and we have that here at Cisco with our cloud security solutions. So those integrations exist. And if those integrations exist, then we can automate the response to particular threats or bad actors trying to get our data or steal things or whatever they're trying to do. If we can automate those functions and have that all integrated, then that gives us time back in the day, which helps out with the issue of having too few experts, because now people on the team, I got more time on my hands to respond to the threats that I have to respond to. And that's going to reduce our exposure. Because of the automated responses, we can get to more things faster without having to wait for an individual person to jump in there and find that out. And don't get me wrong, those people are still 100% essential. The last thing we're trying to say here is that we're going to start reducing jobs and stuff. You still have to have humans that can respond to threats. And so make sure that's very clear with your customers. But those humans are going to be a lot more efficient at their job. They're not going to be pulling their hair out at the end of every day, trying to stay on top of all the threats and alerts and all this stuff coming in. So it's going to really help out with those increasing demands on security teams. So talking about the threat landscape right now, there's a lot of stuff about COVID-19 on here, and I kind of kept that in there because it's easy to kind of help conceptualize what we're talking about here. But the latest attacks that we're seeing, what the bad guys have been doing with COVID is not necessarily creating new types of malware. What they're actually doing is taking, for the most part, existing malware, rebranding it with a COVID paint job, and then sending it back out like they've been doing. And so that happens with COVID. What we're looking at here, this coronamask.com, this is actually a malicious website. Looks pretty legit, right? And what they're doing is, what the bad guys do is they're preying on anything that's topical, anything that's in the news right now, anything that's a little bit scary, anything that they can lean on to shut down the rational part of our brain and turn on the emotional part of our brain. Okay, so that's the name of the game, being a bad guy. If you're trying to get data, get money, whatever it might be. It's how do I bypass? A lot of the times, the average user, because that's the weakest link in the chain, right? How do I bypass that person's ability to respond as a security person, okay? So what this looks like I said, anything topical, political alerts just coming out of the election season, politics in general is highly polarizing. It's very easy to go about your day, see something that you may agree with or not, or maybe not agree with, click on that thing, and that can be something that somebody put there trying to trigger you to click on something, and then they get you, right? Now you got hit by a ransomware attack or a drive-by download or whatever it might be. Fraud, disinformation, the same thing. They put some inflammatory stuff out there trying to get you to click on it. And that's the lure. That's how it works, right? So using lures like Emotet, Ryuk, remote access Trojan variants, that's still a very popular thing to do today. And if you follow Talos, and if you're on the Talos blog, you'll see every week they post kind of the threat of the week or threat of the month, and they'll show you what the bad guys are using, and it's pretty common to have remote access Trojans on there. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're not talking about at this point, you and I are not trying to stop these bad guys. We're not going after them proactively to, stop what they're doing. We're trying to protect the users that see some of this stuff. They have that emotional component. They think about, I need my stimulus bill down here. They think I got to pay my rent. I have to, I got to get masks for my kids. I have to make sure the other political guy doesn't win the election or whatever it might be. All those things that go through their head, they think about that. Oh man, I'm going to click on that. I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to XYZ. They click and they get hit. Okay. So we're trying to protect those users who maybe they don't think with their security brain before they click on things. They don't think with their rational brain before they click on things. They just get triggered by something and they click on it. We want to be able to stop them from clicking on those threats and keep them from infecting the greater network. So if they were to click on any one of these things, any one of these types of threats, whether that's a website, a phishing email, you name it, we're going to be able to stop that with solutions like Umbrella to keep them from making that connection to those malicious sites. Okay, so think about that when you have that customer conversation. How are you protecting those users that are super click happy and not thinking about things from a security standpoint? Want to talk really quick about SecureX now, just for a slide, kind of going back to the integration side of things. This is where a lot of Cisco security is headed today, is having a solution in place, which is a single dashboard, which combines and integrates all of our different security solutions, and not just from Cisco, but third-party security solutions as well. Our Talos intelligence, third-party intelligence, SIMs, SOARs, you name it. We want to have a tool in place that will integrate all this. And we want to talk about this because it's not just good for the customer and their security platform, but it's going to help us have a bigger, wider security conversation and help kind of do a little bit more discovery around what's happening in their network and talk to them about a few more security solutions that they really, truly need to defend against the bad guys. And we're going to talk about that in the demo as well. So that's what I want to talk about for SASE and crossing the finish line. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that gives you some kind of talking points to go back to your customers with. Let's dive in here really quick and talk about, again, kind of growing the conversation, having better visibility, understanding what's happening in the customer environment. And by the way, this is not done with the expectation that you're going to go in and become a demo god and be able to jump on, customers' POVs and do a super deep dive demo with them. But as we go through this, just think about a few things. What can I use to kind of help have a bigger security conversation with our customers? So give me just 1 second to jump out of my PowerPoint here, and I'm going to move over to my demo page. All right, let that spin up really quick. Move this out of the way again. Okay, cool. So Umbrella Dashboard. If you haven't seen the Umbrella Dashboard, this is it right here. This is where everything lives, from the DNS Security, the Secure Web Gateway, the Cloud-Delivered Firewall, those CASB features, that investigation. It's all here in this dashboard, okay? And for the sake of time, got about 15 minutes left. I don't want to talk about everything in here. I just want to talk about a few things that are going to kind of help grow the conversation or get the customer thinking, hey, maybe I actually need the solution after all, right? Maybe I should not turn it off. Keep in mind, if you're going through a Umbrella PPOV, if you're going through the Umbrella Partner Console, I should say, which you should definitely look into if you don't have one of those, that is the dedicated dashboard that we use to push out Umbrella trials. Very easy to set up, very easy to push a trial out. Just keep that in mind. If you're using that, you can get into your customer's dashboard if they give you access and take a look through there and see what kind of threats are happening. And then you can go back and have this conversation with them. And when you do that, usually the conversation looks something like, hey, look at all these threats that are being blocked here in Umbrella. If we end this POV or PPOV or UPC trial, whatever you want to call it, if we shut this down, those threats are going to be making their way in, okay? So through an Umbrella trial, if we actually have traffic going through it, the customer actually sees their data coming in, we usually have upwards of an 80+% chance of closing that deal just by doing the trial. So if you're not on the Umbrella Partner Console, let us know. We will we'll help you get set up on that one. So a couple things to talk about. I could go through the overview and show some of the different threats. I could do that, but again, for the sake of, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, 5-10 minutes, let me show you what I can show you from a visibility standpoint here. That's what we're trying to get at. So I'm going to go, first of all, into my reporting tab. I'm going to look at security activity. I'm going to collapse this panel back over to the left, and we're going to look at a few things. So first of all, I'm looking at just the last 24 hours. I see a ton of threats coming in. This blue bar, this is all of our traffic coming in, the security activity in the last 24 hours. First of all, looking at that one, going through the night, hey, that's weird, 3 a.m., 102 events. What's going on with that? People should be home in bed, not, bringing threats into their work laptop at that time. We can dive in there and find out what's going on those work devices. I can scroll down, and with Active Directory integration, I can see the actual individual and what they're doing, what they're trying to access. Might not find anybody here because it's a live, always on demo, but sometimes we'd see, for example, like, Bob Smith in accounting, right? We can see what Bob Smith is up to and where he's going. So a couple things to note here, again, going back to the visibility conversation, is first of all, let's try this one right here, Wi-Fi4games.com. Okay, that got blocked. That was blocked by somebody on a desktop. But what's interesting about that is that sounds like a pretty benign website, or could have even been somebody's kid on their work laptop browsing the internet. If you were around during the days of like Miniclip, addicting games, probably the same thing as Wi-Fi4games.com, right? So maybe somebody's kid is on their laptop. They're kind of going through there. They open up Wi-Fi4games.com, trying to play a game on that one. And this is going to tell us this date and time, March 4th, so maybe it's over in the UK. This happened, this website was on this person's desktop, associated IP addresses, we blocked it, good to know, okay? So we can go in there and we can have a conversation with this person, hey, maybe not go to those websites, on your work laptop. Depending on what kind of threat it is, it might even tell us if it's, malware, if it's ransomware, if it's whatever it might be, we can see that as well. We can also, if we're looking to have a kind of wider conversation, keep in mind the different threat vectors that the bad guys are using. When a threat comes in, it very, very rarely stays in that same threat vector. So if a threat comes across my firewall, it's probably not going to stay just at the network layer. It's eventually going to end up on my desktops and laptops. There might be some email activity happening there as well. It's probably going to go all over the place, looking for different ways to get in. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through this. But talking about a wider conversation, look at this URL right here that got blocked. If I'm a somewhat rational person, depending on what day it is, if I look at this and I see this website, all this garbled stuff, that looks like nothing to me, right? Being a hopefully rational person, if I look at this, I'm probably not going to click on that because it looks a little bit sketchy. So why would somebody click on that? Well, if I dive into it, it might tell us, maybe not, but I can see that website. I could even take that website and drop it into investigate here and get a readout on what exactly is going on behind the scenes. But because it's so garbled, because it's so weird looking, it's probably not somebody someone clicked on. It's probably a phishing attack that came in that got masked as something else. Maybe it was, maybe it was something like Wi-Fi4games.com when it came across on somebody's URL or through their email. Looks fairly benign. I click on it. This is the actual URL that's behind it. I just got hit with a phishing attack, or I just got hit with a ransomware attack. Okay, so you might see something like that. That's something to keep in mind. These attacks that come in, they're pretty sneaky. You're probably not going to see this SJPEX, blah, 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 blah. You're probably going to see something that looks pretty safe, and then you're going to get hit by that, okay? So from a visibility standpoint, we can see, again, date and time that it happened, the person that it happened to, if they had their AD set up, the website that they went to, associated IP addresses, we blocked it. Good stuff to know, right? So you can dive into that one and have some good visibility conversations. What are you doing for email security? It looks like you got hit by a phishing attack. What's going on there? Looks like you hit Bob's laptop and accounting. What are you doing for endpoint security, right? So we can kind of have that conversation with them. Also want to talk about a couple more things. Let's talk about app discovery and business applications. Again, going to collapse that back down. I want to know from a shadow IT standpoint, how many apps are happening or being used in my infrastructure? And that's not a bad question to ask. It says here 3,943 unreviewed apps or over 4,000 discovered. Ask your customers almost just for kicks, hey, how many applications are happening or being used in your infrastructure at any given time or being used by your people on work devices at any given time? It's kind of funny because sometimes they'll come back with maybe 50 apps, maybe 100 apps, maybe 200 apps. It's not uncommon at all to have 3,500 plus apps in the environment. And if you think about that, a lot of people, when I think about what apps am I using in my day-to-day life, well, I'm using Salesforce. I got a couple Cisco apps that I'm using, maybe some reporting apps, a couple of those. But if you're adding that up in your head, that doesn't come out to a whole lot of apps. But what you're not thinking about is on top of my unlimited devices that are happening in my home here, that are probably interacting with my laptop because of the same traffic or whatever. On top of that, think about all the different applications that are running on your individual work computer. Just for processes, things you don't even think about that are happening behind the scenes. There's a ton of them that are going on at any given time. So that's usually a pretty fun one. Hey, you know, how many apps do you think are happening? Let's run a trial. Let me show you how many are actually going on in your environment. It's probably going to be in the thousands. And that itself will probably be a pretty big, you know, mind-blowing moment for them. But we can go down through here. We can see what kind of apps. We can see anonymizing apps, P2P file sharing apps, gaming apps. Some are threatening. Some are just, you know, they're time wasters that we don't want to have on our work laptops. You can put blocks on that. But think about, for example, P2P file sharing apps. Again, if you were around during the days of like LimeWire, Kazaa, there were a couple others out there. Think about how many like viruses and stuff those different P2P file sharing apps were bringing in by people just trying to share music unethically or illegally, right? So that happens quite a bit. You got teenagers in the house. Are you letting them use your work laptop? Are they downloading tools like this? Probably. Let's find out about that and see what's going on in the environment. Let's find out about anonymizing apps that people are using outside of work controls, right? That's probably pretty sketchy if we're seeing those. Apps by different types of vulnerability. We might have, for example, financial, you know, viability apps going on, document converters. Those are always a little bit sketchy. You know, if I'm turning a Word document into a PDF or vice versa, are those applications stealing my data or my corporate data? Something to think about. So we can go through and kind of show the different applications and their risks. We can show them by what level of risk. Lots of low risk, but another nice amount of medium risk. I think there's a little bit of high in there as well. I think there might be even a very high risk app. That kind of gives us an idea on the priority. What should I be looking at first, right? By category and risk. If I go through here, I see a business intelligence app. We see that there's a very high risk application in there. Two of them actually. Oh yeah, one. So I can dive in and see who's doing that one. And it's not just a security conversation as well. You think about this from a business standpoint. If we at Cisco here are trying to standardize on Box, for example, we want all of our business traffic to go through Box. We have a contract with Box. We're going to standardize on Box. Everything's going to go through Box. And then I got, you know, my teammate over here putting all his stuff in Dropbox. That's kind of going against what we're trying to do. We might want to have some visibility to that. We might want to put a block on that and say, hey, man, we're doing Box. Everything here is Box. Don't go through Dropbox because we're going to see it, okay? That's what's happening here at App Discovery is security on top of visibility just into, you know, standard business operation. So think about that from an application standpoint when you're talking with customers. One more thing I want to talk about, one more report is activity volume report. So a few things to talk about here, which is kind of cool. From a security standpoint, I'm going to drop that down. It tells me a few things, okay? So for prevention and containment, it gives me some good numbers and some good data on what's happening here. So I can look, for example, prevention, 282 DNS requests or whatever were blocked, right? Or allowed, excuse me. I can go and look at that. They're probably benign, but you know, maybe I want to check that out. I also want to see, you know, 1,600 of those were blocked. That's a lot of blocks. I want to find out who's going to those websites on their work computer, why they're going there, what they're doing with those websites. Are they bringing in threats that are going to harm the rest of us, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty standard prevention conversation, right? What gets really interesting, though, is looking at my containment requests, okay? So from a security standpoint, what Umbrella is doing is it is not just blocking threats that come in north-south. About 91% of threats come across the DNS layer from north-south. And we can block those, and that's awesome. But what about that other 9% that comes in through a backdoor somehow? What about the user that has a threat on their iPhone? They go and plug that into their laptop to charge it. They let a bunch of threats into their work laptop, and now they've gotten something. That's not coming across the DNS layer. That's coming through a physical connection, right? So what about those? Or what about the user that finds a USB stick in the parking lot? They want to know what's on it. They go and jam that thing in their work laptop. Boom, they have a ransomware pop-up. right? So what about that kind of backdoor? What do we do for security from that standpoint? Well, we still have security in place there. So talking about the ransomware conversation, for example, if I plug my iPhone or my Android or whatever, or a USB stick into my work laptop and I get an attack, or an attack comes onto my work laptop from there, the way that that threat technology works is it has to do what's called a command and control callback. It has to go back to the individual that initially pushed out the threat. Let's say that, it's a bad guy in Russia, for example. And it has to go across the DNS back to the bad guy in Russia and say, hey, I made it in. What do I do now? He sends a request back. Hey, that's awesome. Encrypt everything. Take it for ransom. Let's make some money off this. That's a command and control callback. Because that has to happen and go back across the DNS layer, we can stop it right here with Umbrella and contain it within the network and keep it from going back to Russia, keep it from turning on that encryption, and keep it from standing up that ransomware attack, which is pretty dang cool. So even if I get an attack that comes in, I can still protect myself and my company from that type of attack. Okay, so if that happens, I want to look at this and go, hey, that's great. Umbrella blocked 11 malicious attacks, 11, ransomware C2 callbacks, right? But kind of begs the question, why were there 11 blocks in the first place? What's happening there? Well, I can click on that one. That's going to take me to my top identities page. And now this is going to take me into a couple of different things. So we got a few users here, 5 of them. And again, keep in mind, it says default site, new network, you name it. If we have Active Directory, we can see the actual individual that clicked on this stuff. So I can go in here and I can go, okay, default site, 3 requests, 3 people at that default site clicked on command and control types of callbacks. And so then I can go in, I can look at a couple different things here. I can look at the activity search. So for example, there's that SJPXEXAY, must have been a phishing attack. There's another one, DL4all. Don't know what that is, location E2DM. That's a French website, apparently. So I can look at those and go, okay, somebody probably accidentally clicked on that or something might have happened. And as it says here, I can go to investigate. I can see what's going on behind the scenes there. But what I really want to know is now that, let me get that out of the way, now that something's happened here, I can go to this individual who clicked on whatever they clicked on. I can see that one was phishing. I got 2 command and control websites here. One looks like it was masking itself as a real estate page. So I can look at that and I go, okay, somebody clicked on this stuff, but now this ransomware dropper or this command and control dropper or whatever, this phishing attack email is sitting on an endpoint somewhere. If you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, have Cisco Secure Endpoint, formerly known as AMP for Endpoints, you can go in there and clean that out of there. Even better, an automatic action can happen where Umbrella is going to call over to AMP and say, hey, we saw this over here. Start cleaning up over there. And AMP's going to quarantine it, and AMP's going to clean it up based on the policies you have set up and everything. It's going to respond to it. It's also going to talk to SecureX and say, hey, we saw this here. Anybody else see it? And your email security solution is going to go, oh, man, we saw the same phishing attack through Bob's emails that he was sending back and forth. That might be where it came from. And so now we have a map of how this attack happened, how far it went, who was patient 0, how far it spread is the damage, what was the timeline like. We can look at all that stuff right away. So when you're having this conversation, hey, command and control, that's on somebody's endpoint. What are you doing for endpoint security? Now we're moving beyond the DNS conversation. Hey, phishing attacks, what are you doing for email security? Now we're moving beyond that. We can talk about Cisco Cloud Email Security or Cloud Mailbox Defense, right? So lots of different ways to grow that out. Lots of cool integrations kind of there taking place. So that does it for the conversation around SASE, crossing the finish line, SIG, DNS, kind of having a full-on umbrella conversation. I know that was a ton we just threw at you, but hopefully that's helpful for those customer conversations that you're having. Hopefully it helps you have those bigger, wider security conversations. Grows your pipeline a little bit. As always, any questions that come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or our team. Always happy to help out with that one, especially if you're interested in looking at the Umbrella Partner Console for your organization. Highly recommend that because, look, we just had like 5 or 6 different security conversations off of one tool, okay? So with that, anything else, Jason, that we need to cover before we close it out for the day?
I think that's it, Dominic. I really appreciate all the insight you gave to us on that, which is great. And I think the main message for us is going to be obviously in that SASE conversation to really use Umbrella to really start the Cisco security conversation. Really a great way to kind of get footing with that, to find out what your customer is seeing, but more importantly, show them the things that they don't see will be a great way for that DNS security. So I think that that's pretty much what we have for today. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, as Dominic said, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to Dominic. We're always here to help you guys out. Thank you for your time today, Dominic.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody.